Joining us now, I'm delighted he's with us, Roger Stone, conservative author, commentator, advisor for Nixon and Reagan, pal of the president, and he joins us now. Roger, great to talk to you. How are you?
Laura, great to be with you.
I want to talk about this McCain point, and then I want to move on to the hysteria about this Papadopoulos figure. But what do you make of John McCain's constant elbowing and smashing the White House and populists? And is this just, sore loser stuff? I mean, his wing of the party is dying and the populists are taking over?
He's just drowning in bitterness, personal jealousy. Look, I supported this guy for president not once but twice. But it's really pathetic what he has become. Now, his temper tantrums and outbursts and public meltdowns are legendary in Washington, D.C., but they've only gotten progressively worse. He's gotten extraordinarily abusive, and he's just got to get over the fact that Donald Trump became president and he didn't, which is what I really think is at the root of his problems. He's become a cheerleader for the Obamas and the Clintons. This is a guy who actually said the Russian collusion scandal is worse than Watergate. No, it isn't, Senator. There is no Russian collusion scandal. It's a delusion, a myth, a fairy tale. Wake up.
And remember, he delivered that Russian dossier, didn't he, to, was it the FBI or to the White House? Which was it? He had an involvement.
To the FBI.
To the FBI.
Yeah, no, he was trafficking in what he probably knew to be a fabricated document. I mean, somebody should be filing ethics charges against him in the U.S. Senate. He's really become a pathetic figure in my view. It's very sad. I'm not angry about him. I'm just very sad about what he has become.
Yeah, well, speaking of, you said crackpot conspiracy theories. He was personally trafficking in them, like this dossier of all these salacious allegations that he was so bitter about what Trump said about him that he had to bring it over to the FBI.
What about the greatest conspiracy theory of them all? Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction, and that's an excuse to go to war in Iraq, that he has yellow cake enriched uranium. That's the greatest conspiracy theory of all time. How much more crackpot can it get? How many Americans had to lose their lives over that one?
Roger, have you ever heard of this George Papadopoulos figure? I had never laid eyes on him, and I spent a lot of time with various members of the campaign over the last few years. I got to know a lot of them very well. Never heard of him, never seen him.
No, either have I. Look, in a presidential campaign, I've been in 10 of them. It's very common to have these voluntary advisory groups that are largely put together pretty much for the purposes of a press release. This fellow had no authority. He wasn't on the payroll. He wasn't a full-time staff member. He wasn't even a staff member. He was a member of some voluntary advisory group on foreign policy, just like, by the way, Carter Page. So, he can write any email he wants, but he never had any authority to set up any meetings with anybody.
Well, and I think he was obviously trying to curry favor within the campaign, perhaps in the hopes of turning that into some permanent position. And if he was some mover and shaker, they certainly would have given him a larger role in the campaign, or perhaps even tried to hire him once Trump became president.
Well, the strange part is that all of his background appears that he was affiliated with organizations that were anti-Russian, neocon groups and so on. And then suddenly he pops up trying to advocate meetings with the Russians. Makes very little sense. Maybe I'm confused. I thought Mueller's probe was regarding potential Russian coalition in the 2016 presidential election. Yet everything that Paul Manafort and his deputy Rick Gates were indicted for yesterday, none of it related to Russia. They charged these guys with everything but the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. But none of it pertains to Russia. I think the American people can see through this. He's treating Manafort like some kind of mafia drug dealer, seeking, I guess, to get a bigger fish. But I've known Paul Manafort over 50 years. He was an usher in my wedding. He was my campaign manager when I ran for Young Republican National Chairman successfully in 1977. I've known him all the way back to college Republicans. He is not going to bear false witness against the President of the United States. He is not going to lie and make up things just to please Mr. Mueller. I think he's going to plead. He has pled not guilty. He's going to go to trial, and he's going to be acquitted because this is a bogus indictment. This is a politically motivated, bogus indictment.
We're talking to our friend Roger Stone, and people, I mentioned this yesterday, have to remember that it was Black, Manafort, Stone, and Atwater, right? That was the name of your old firm?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and Lee Atwater, of course, no longer with us. I haven't seen Charlie Black. Is Charlie Black still alive? Isn't that awful? I don't know if he's still alive.
Oh, yes, very, very much so. He is still a fixture in Washington, D.C.
Let's talk about the president's ability to, or inability to, I think, compartmentalize this, as he has so much on his plate right now. We have this trip to Asia, Roger. This is so important. Japan wants to be reassured that in the event of an attack by North Korea on Japan, we'll have a meaningful strike, and they want the nuclear terminology used by U.S., which we haven't done. Of course, we have the tax reform, and yet yesterday we heard that Donald Trump was fuming all day about these indictments, and of course the plea deal. How can he compartmentalize, and what should he do in this case?
Well, look, I think the president needs to remain focused, first of all, on his tax reform proposal and to revitalizing the American economy. That's number one. He's got a lunatic in North Korea who is
Roger, you sound like you're moving around. We need to hear you, so try to minimize the movement. Thank you.
Gee, I'm not. So
okay, it sounds like you are.
Yeah, it's I just arrived in Washington D.C. The president's got plenty on his plate here, and I think his tweet yesterday was prophetic. Why is the focus not on Uranium One, where you have a real crime, and ironically, a crime that embroils Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. McCabe of the FBI, Mr. Rosenstein? I think we need a special prosecutor for that matter. Now, let me point out to you that if those gentlemen came under federal investigation, as well they should, based on everything that I have read and seen, well, then they could not function in their current roles, including Mr. Mueller could not continue as the special counsel. So the president's right. Why isn't the focus on crooked Hillary? Why isn't the focus on the $145 million that the Clintons collected in connection with Uranium One, or the $500,000 that Bill pocketed as a speaking fee? That is really the single most important thing the president could do right now would be to tell his attorney general, to order his attorney general to appoint a special prosecutor in the matter of Uranium One.
Yeah, last night John Kelly was on with me on the Ingraham angle, and he's like, look, I'm not a lawyer, but yeah, you need a special counsel to investigate these other matters, because clearly Mueller can't do it. He has a conflict, because he was FBI director when this stuff went down. So, you need another special counsel. I mean, it seems like we have a lot. Mueller has a lot on his plate already that he's trying to concoct. So you definitely need someone else to come in and do that. But it also demonstrates, Roger, why it was such an ill-advised decision for Jeff Sessions to recuse himself from any of this. He had no reason to recuse himself. And then with Rod Rosenstein in as his deputy, which was another bad choice, this is where we are today. It's ridiculous.
No, you raise an excellent point. Rod Rosenstein's patron in the Trump administration, the individual who urged his appointment, was Congressman Elijah Cummings, one of the most virulent anti-Trump critics in the U.S. Congress. Mr. Rosenstein's appointment was pushed by Reince Priebus. This guy's a liberal Republican and never a Trumper. Why is he even in a Trump administration? And then, of course, there's the question of who told him to appoint a special counsel. Special counsels are appointed when you have a clearly delineated crime. And for some reason, Justice Department can't prosecute it. We don't have a crime in the Russian matter. There's still no crime proven. So it is outrageous. But ironically, those are the four. In other words, Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, both at the FBI when Uranium One was under investigation, and then Mr. Rosenstein, the U.S. attorney in charge of that investigation, and Mr. McCabe, the guy who authorized the payment of our taxpayer funds to GPS Fusion for the phony dossier. Those are the four guys up to their necks in Fusion One, and justice needs to be done. They are the ones who should be currently under federal investigation. And if it takes a special counselor to do it, then so be it.
Yeah, and Jeff Sessions, maybe is thinking because he recused himself, he can't even move on a special counsel request. I don't know, but that recusal will go down as one of the biggest mistakes, I think, of this administration. It was a huge error in judgment, and this is coming from me, who really adores Jeff Sessions. So it pains me to say that. Roger, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for stopping by for a few moments. I hope we see you on TV really soon, and happy Halloween.